how we get caught up in the destructive cycle of rumination and how to break free. Before we go further, I want to mention I'm a bit sleep deprived because of some design flaws in some technical equipment I bought for an upcoming trip. Since I'm flying out to Anchorage tomorrow, I want to make sure I get this filming done today. This is the first of 2 videos because I'm not sure what kind of setup I'll have on the other end. Ben Ufana, I'll also mention that because I include so much in-depth material, insight that I want to convey in these videos. From the articles I'm writing, I'm going to be reading from the article itself. Anyone who's been through heartbreak, betrayal, or the loss of someone they deeply care about knows what it's like to lie awake at night with a mind that won't shut off. You replay every word, every moment, wondering if you said or did something wrong. You're second guessing yourself endlessly, what you should have done differently, what they meant by what they said, and what you failed to see. And it feels like your mind is searching for some kind of resolution, but instead it keeps spinning. You feel hurt, sad, betrayed, and yet you still long for them. That longing only adds to the confusion. You know they're gone, or that they're not good for you, but your heart hasn't caught up with the truth. And so you feel trapped in the story that won't let you go. But here's the truth. As you begin taking the steps necessary to facilitate your healing, the painful drama that's engulfing you will gradually begin to dissolve. The emotional storm will settle. And in time, you'll begin to reclaim the peace and clarity and your sense of self. Rumination is the mental replay, reliving what happened, what was said, and what wasn't. It's your brain's attempt to solve the unsolvable. You go over every nuance, hoping for clarity and closure. Obsession, though, is deeper. It's the fixation. Your mind spins not just on events, but on the person, their presence, their absence, and their every move. You stalk their social media. You imagine what they're doing now, and you keep the fantasy alive because letting go feels like a kind of death. Together, rumination and obsession feed the emotional pain. They create a feedback loop. The pain leads to rumination, to more pain, to obsession, and then emotional hijacking, and the cycle just keeps repeating itself. Your brain isn't doing this to punish you. It's trying to make sense of what happened. The limbic system and default mode network kick in, trying to bring resolution to an emotional wound it can't heal. But without closure, soothing, or integration, the system gets stuck. Neurotransmitters involved in bonding, dopamine, oxytocin, vasopressin, serotonin, and norepinephrine, drop dramatically when the relationship collapses or the person disappears. These are the very chemicals that once gave you that sense of closeness, joy, love, and attachment. In their absence, your heart aches, and so does your entire body. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, spikes. And emotionally, you're consumed by grief, sadness, anger, and profound fears of loss. You begin to spiral out of control. The sharp drop in norepinephrine and serotonin feeds the obsessive thinking and emotional turmoil. And because your nervous system hasn't completed the cycle of attachment and release, you're left feeling strung out on this person. The loop isn't just mental. Emotional pain is stored somatically. The body becomes a vast reservoir of unprocessed grief and the lingering impressions of the heart-rending relational drama we're either in the midst of or have yet to fully digest. You may feel the fear, sadness, and excruciating pain of loss in your chest, the horribly unsettling sensations in your gut, and the tension in your back, shoulders, and neck. These are your body's expressions of heartbreak and relational trauma. Each time your mind spins back into the narrative of love and loss, Your body reacts as though the injury is happening all over again. And that's why even as the intensity fades, emotional pain can still well up months or even years later. Obsession isn't just about the person who left or hurt us. It's often rooted in much deeper emotional wounding, unmet childhood needs, abandonment trauma, and a lingering hunger for emotional nourishment. And it doesn't end there. As we move through life, many of our most essential needs, to love, to be loved, to feel seen and safe, continue to go unmet. The pain accumulates. So when someone comes along who seems to awaken our longing, it all comes rushing to the surface. When someone we loved or felt deeply attached to severs ties with us, especially when the relationship was intense and marked by inconsistency, it reactivates deeper layers of emotional wounding. The mind begins to obsess because, along with the body, it's grieving. Obsession becomes a desperate attempt to make sense of the loss, and in many cases to restore the connection or to reclaim the love we feel we've lost. Sometimes the fantasies take over, leaving you disconnected from reality. You imagine getting back together, or in some instances, taking revenge. You're left strung out emotionally, feeling that painful longing and at times all-consuming waves of grief. The absence of this person who played such an important role in your life, and the realization that the future you envisioned with them is no longer, can be deeply unsettling. We pay a high price whenever we get caught up in romantic obsession. So much time is lost, time that could be spent connecting with someone who is emotionally available, someone who has the capacity to care for us, to be a true friend, and to love us in return. Romantic obsession stifles our creative expression, and it takes up precious time that could be devoted to bettering ourselves, to building the kind of life we actually want to live, and move towards the experiences and relationships we long for. The powerful emotions that keep us fixated on another person, the clinging, the aching, the inability to let go, consume enormous amounts of life force that can leave us deeply depleted. Being caught up in a romantic obsession is like being on a drug, and in many ways we are intoxicated by our own biochemical cocktail of hormones and neurotransmitters. The drive to bond, the grief and the hurt we've carried for years, the pain of unmet needs and past losses. It's all stirred up and projected onto this one person. And it keeps us from being truly present in our own lives. All the while, we're caught up in this maddening narrative, a story we've constructed in our minds, built around the illusory meaning and significance we've attached to this person. And while we're living inside of that story, we're not really here. We're not present in the moment. We're not engaged fully with those around us or with life itself. This isn't about blaming or criticizing ourselves. For many of us, this kind of obsession is a crucial stage in the healing journey. The problem is that most people don't understand what's happening beneath the surface. They haven't learned how to work effectively with their emotions, so they stay stuck, looping in pain, fixated on someone who's not truly there, closed off to the individuals, experiences, and interventions that could help them to heal and grow. Like so many others, I found myself caught in this destructive cycle, especially when I was getting mixed messages from someone who was ambiguous or emotionally unavailable, or when the future of a relationship felt uncertain, or when the tenuous connection was coming to an end. My mind would reel endlessly, triggering a storm of intense emotions. And those very emotions would then drive the obsessive thoughts even further. Back then, I would talk endlessly about my lovesick drama to anyone who would listen, hoping it might somehow bring relief. But over time, I realized it was only making matters worse, keeping the story alive and fueling the emotional turmoil. Being very intuitive, I eventually found my own way of breaking the cycle. I started asking myself, what are the deepest feelings behind this narrative? I would then breathe softly and deeply while fully immersing my awareness in the depths of whatever feelings or bodily sensations arose, no matter how painful. That became the turning point. The distressing emotions we experience after a devastating breakup, ghosting, or other forms of relational torment can be some of the most excruciating pain we will ever feel in this lifetime. And yet, not fully understanding our emotional process or how healing actually works, many of us become afraid to go to those tender, vulnerable places inside of ourselves. We put on the brakes, we numb out, and we hold back. But I found it absolutely essential to go to those places that hurt the most, to feel it all, the grief, the heartbreak, the confusion, the overwhelming fears of impending loss, to let it all move through me. I would breathe deeply into the pain, into whatever feelings or bodily sensations were surfacing in the moment. It wasn't easy. It required enormous patience and courage. I was venturing into the vast unknown, and I kept reminding myself, whatever time it needs to take. Instead of rushing the process, I stayed with it. I allowed the deeper, unfamiliar parts of myself to rise to the surface. Parts of me I hadn't met before. No matter how it felt, even when unsettling or excruciatingly painful, I embraced the full range of emotion and the most vulnerable parts of myself with complete acceptance. I allowed myself to feel deeply, and I listened, and I let them teach me. Nearly everyone at some point will experience obsessive looping, especially when they've formed an attachment to someone, when they're feeling insecure in a relationship, or when that connection begins to falter or comes to an end. For many people, the thoughts and those highly charged emotions begin to eventually fade. They're able to let go and move on with their lives. But for some of us, the attachment wounds run so extraordinarily deep that healing requires a much more intentional and sustained effort. For many, working with a psychotherapist can be especially helpful, someone who can help us make sense of our emotional wounding, identify the patterns we keep repeating in our relationships, and begin developing more effective coping strategies. But intellectual understanding alone can only take us so far. Grief, loss, abandonment, heartbreak, all these emotions and lived experiences leave deep and lasting impressions in the body. They're not just memories, they're somatic imprints etched into our cells, organs, muscles, and connective tissues and nervous system. These embedded impressions, along with the emotions tied to them, become the fuel that drives our obsessive loops. For many of us, they've been stored inside for years, even decades. What we need is a steady embodied practice, one that helps us access and work directly with our authentic emotional responses. When we're in the throes of a breakup, receiving mixed signals, or left in silence by someone we care about, those raw, acute emotions tend to rise to the surface. And that's a powerful opportunity. But even in the quiet times, when we're not actively in a relationship and our emotions feel dull and inaccessible, we can still engage the deeper levels of our experience. In these moments, it can be extraordinarily helpful to center your awareness in the middle of your chest where the heart and lungs reside, or deep within the abdomen, where the intestines hold the impressions of unresolved grief and loss. Soft, deep breathing, while fully immersing your attention in whatever feelings and sensations arise, no matter how subtle, will begin to draw out the deeper layers of emotion that need to be felt and digested. Short meditations, 10, 15, or even 20 minutes, have become popular thanks to apps and our ever-eroding attention spans. But true healing takes time. In my experience, you need at least an hour a day, and more is better. And I know for many that sounds like a lot, but consider how much time you spend spiraling in obsessive thought, and consider the far greater cost of reenacting dysfunctional patterns that continue to sabotage your relationships. We all need external intervention, practices, and therapies that go far beyond what we can do on our own. Deep tissue body work, such as massage and rolfing, all of these help to bring us more fully into our bodies and make the emotions we've buried more accessible so they can be worked with and digested. For decades now, I've relied primarily on the Vision Quest, a traditional Native American practice that involves fasting alone in the mountains for 4 days and nights without food and water. There have been moments during the Vision Quest where I felt this extraordinarily powerful presence descend into my body. I've relived traumas from childhood, adolescence, and later in life. I could feel this presence working within me, helping me to digest both my lived experience and all those highly charged emotions attached to them, healing the deeply wounded parts of myself. And I emerged from these quests feeling lighter, more resilient, and able to let go of the unhealthy attachments. As I began forming healthier models of attachment, I found myself attracting different kinds of companions and finally beginning to co-create relationships that felt more meaningful and deeply fulfilling. Having trained with a traditional Native American doctor, medicine man, and gone through so many vision quests, I'm now able to facilitate the same depth of healing for others, especially those struggling with attachment wounds. As you begin to digest your past and even present relational traumas and the emotions tied to them, and your biochemical balance is gradually restored, you start to feel lighter. Your mind quiets, and gradually you come to a place of ease and presence. You start rebuilding not just your life, but your relationship with yourself. The more present and embodied you become, the less power the loop has over you. You begin to root yourself in the here and now. You begin to choose life again. Breath by breath, moment by moment, you return more fully to yourself. If you're feeling called to work with me, you can look below this video to click the link to message me or call me directly at 332-333-5155. Thank you for joining me today, for listening to what I have to share. And by the way, if you haven't already done so, click like, subscribe, and do share this video with anyone who you feel can benefit. And that will help me to reach those individuals who really do need to hear this message.